Hello, everyone. This is the Mass Media Final. For my article that I chose, it's called The Limits of Photography by Jiri Benovisky, and it basically talks a lot about production and what makes a photograph and what doesn't. And it ties in pretty heavily with chapter 3 in our book, which was Visual Literacy and the Truth Behind an Image. So I'm basically going to go through the article, tie some things in, and we'll go from there. The article starts out with a pretty strong introduction, and it uses traditional film photography almost as a control variable in the article. It compares cameras, like this, your standard film cameras, and film photography production versus digital production on a camera like I am currently using to film this. And it talks a lot about the differences and what both of those really get in terms of photography and producing a single photograph. So it talks about, obviously, the limits of photography. Now, it doesn't necessarily just compare film photography with digital photography for the whole thing. Like I said, it uses film photography as a variable, as a control variable, almost as something to refer to in terms of production, due to the fact that film photography was the first form of digital production. And the first, what we have as reference for an actual production of an image. And when I say production, I mean the physical act of loading film, taking the picture, and then taking that physical film out, developing it, and then making a photograph, a physical thing. And that's what Benovisky talks about a lot, is the difference between that process and this process. This is obviously a video, but of clicking and the picture's taken. It's done. Well, it's not done. That's where the article gets interesting, you could say. But he talks a lot about, after that, making an actual manipulation of a photograph, and he calls it that. He calls it a manipulation of a photograph. And in our book, as I said, chapter 3 goes over the visual literacy and the truth behind an image. It talks a lot about image misrepresentation and manipulation as a whole section. And it talks a lot about this can happen in film photography, but even more in digital photography. People can, and this is, I don't want to necessarily say a problem, but what happens in the digital world when we have engines and software systems such as Photoshop and Lightroom, where you can manipulate something, and where's that line of, is it a photograph or not? So this article really ties in specifically with image misrepresentation and manipulation, and when manipulation has gone too far. And Benovisky takes the argument that this manipulation is necessary for a digital photography, for a digital photograph, to exist. He says that basically that the whole intermediate stage of production and the after stages of production have manipulation specifically in digital photography that actually make an image what it is. Now, he says there's limits to that, of course, and I'll refer to the book on this, that alterations can go too far. For example, in the book, we have a picture of manipulated images in the Olympics in Berlin, and they put teams in, if that makes sense. You can kind of see it right there. That's what they talk about. Putting images in, or putting people in images where they don't belong, crossing images to make the effect of not an artistic kind of thing, not at all, but a something to deceive someone, purposely deceive an audience to get a point across or to fake an event. There's that sort of manipulation, which Benevitsky talks about as a whole different thing. So Benevitsky mostly talks about film photography, as I said, as a back burner, as a reference point to traditional production of a photograph. And then there's digital photography, which uses a whole new platform, and it helps things be created a lot easier. The only thing is that realism is different. You could say realism isn't accurate, whereas film photography on a camera like this, it's as real as it really gets. You were really there, and it was the real image, depending on how much you edited, of course. And that editing phase is what Benevitsky talks about, of does that make the image real, and does it limit it? And to finalize this video, he says no, it's actually a necessary piece. There's a fine line between misrepresenting a whole image as is, and then making it better. And he says in today's society that is necessary to manipulate it in a program such as Photoshop or Lightroom. Manipulation is nowadays part of production. And that's all I have for you. Thank you for watching this video.